Hey guys, and welcome to another video. And today we're learning about Agile Scrum.
Agile Scrum.
Agile.
Agile is like very quick, right? When you play game, there's a thing about Agile. Agility. Scrum is the methodology in a way to make your project agile. So it's a very popular, probably the most popular way to manage your projects. So you can use it to manage your life, your study as well. So because you've started your coding project, that escape game. So you've done some progress, but we don't have a way to track it. We don't have a way to plan it and make it more official project, kind of like, yeah. So this is, I want to introduce you this and how the people in this industry, they work and how they use this methodology to help their projects. So everything starts with a wish list and your dream team, right? So to make your project going.
So what dream team?
We
you
are the
mean
dream
by
team.
No, you mean by that YouTuber called Dream, or is it what you dream of?
No, it's just the fancy word for our team.
Probably.
So the backlog, the product backlog, which is the wish list. So it contains what we call user stories. User stories is basically the things you want to do. So for example, you want to make this escape game, right? So inside the game, you have different features. Every single feature should be a user story. So for example, last time we said we need to input the difficulty to let the user to choose, and then like 1, 2, 3, all those things. So that's one of the story you can imagine. So the user stories will keep growing because you have new ideas coming all the time for your project. Yeah, if your project you want to improve it better and better, you will have new ideas. So you will have more and more stories. When you have the story, you usually should have a rough idea of how big it is. For example, if you think it's I need to make it visualize and everything as a 3D game, then it's too big, right? So that's a super large XXL size. Then we need to break it down. Depend on the size and the how interesting you think the story will be. We can prioritize those stories. Say what we do first, what do we do next. So that's also part of the user stories in the backlog. And then we have the team, right? Because for you, it's just you and me, right? But in a real world, there will be like teams that work on a project. So in the Agile Scrum team, we usually say your team should be small. It should be you should be able to feed your team with one single pizza. That should be the size of your team. So it shouldn't be too big of a team, because if it's too big, too many people, you might be there might be too many communication and cooperation, and then things get slowed down, right? So it shouldn't be too big, it shouldn't be too small.
Just to say, it sort of makes sense. Also in school, sometimes when I work with other people, usually we do worse than one person. So, and sometimes there's group projects. Sometimes I say, no, I don't want to go with a group because the advantage is to that you should be able to get it great faster.
Yeah, but with the smaller group, you can get some help, and then you can get faster. So in the team, there will be roles, right? Who does what? So one role in here is called product owner. So this guy owns the product, so he knows the best how we want to make this product, and what kind of user story should be put in the product, what kind of things shouldn't. I think in our project, we are both kind of product owners, because we can, we provide ideas, so we have the say that whether it should be in this project or not. But in real world, this product owner guy, he or she will talk to the business side and even outside the clients. So what they want and whether that's something the company or the team want to work on. So he will mainly he will consult the team, but he will mainly decide whether that story get involved in the project into the backlog. Yeah. Okay. So also the prioritize, this guy will have a say on that, because whether the outcome is whatever we need the product to be. Then we have the Scrum Master. So this methodology called Scrum. Scrum Master is like a team lead, but not necessarily. The Scrum Master will manage the process and meetings. So it's like a helper guy for the team to manage, organize meetings, all those things.
Are you like when you go to work, aren't you the Scrum Master or something?
It used to be when we are small.
When
we start, but now I'm at a higher level. I don't involve in those small team projects anymore.
I saw everybody tell these people how.
Yeah, but that's because I work on much higher level. So we also have team members, right? So team members does the work. They usually, there are people coding, there are people testing, there are people, help you organize design the thing. So for our team, we just us, right? So it's we can demonstrate this easily because we're a small team. So the team members will do estimation. They will estimate on the stories, like how big it is, because they are the guys who will work on the stories. So they know how much time or how big that story will be. So they provide estimates, and they do the work, they implement the project, the coding, all those things. And then they deliver or release the product to the clients. So for us, we just, make a thing and then we play it, and then maybe we release it in the future to everyone online. Yeah. So next idea we need to introduce is called sprint or iteration. So it is a repeatable duration. So usually in a industry kind of environment, it will be like 2 weeks, that's the standard iteration. But for us, maybe it's small. We can do 1 week every week, right? So it will have a start day and end day, and then on the start day we will have a planning meeting. Say in the next iteration, what do we do, right? So for example, if we decide we have a start on every Sunday and then end just that iteration of sprint on the Saturday, so that's a 1 week iteration. So on the Sunday we'll do the planning meeting and see what do we want to work on in the next whole week. Yeah. And there's a meeting called stand up, because we want to make that meeting short, because that stand-up meeting happens every day on the start of every day when you start to work. It's called stand-up because we want people to stand up, not sit down. So you feel tired if you stand up for too long, so the meeting can be short. So that's why it's called stand-up. So usually it's less than 10-15 minutes. You just in the stand-up, you just talk about what has been done like yesterday and what will be worked on today, and is there any obstacles, like difficulties in your work, right? So only 3 things you usually talk about in the stand-up, like a report to the team, like what have you done, what I will work on today, and any difficulty I need help, those kind of things. And once that's communicated, if there's a further more details need to be discussed, you guys sit down. There's a sit-down meeting. So it
will be like a bit longer?
It will be detailed a bit longer. So as needed, you can plan those meetings with different people to sit down and work out. For example, you have a difficulty on certain things, you need a discussion across several people, and then you organize a sit-down meeting to have that discussed.
Okay.
Yeah. And at the end of the sprint, like on the Saturday, for us, it will be a retrospective meeting. That means you review the whole week, the work you have done, and you basically talk about what has been working well, what's not working well, and what should you keep doing. So that way, every week, you review whatever you have done, and then from that meeting, you can see in the next iteration what can be improved. So you get better and better every week. Yeah. And if there are stories that's not finished, you usually just move the stories into the next iteration at the end. Yeah. And then there will be review, there will be demo. So if the work you have done in the week, so you show everyone, oh, I've done this story, these stories in this week, and they look like this. How do you play it? Whatever. You show everyone, so everyone get an idea of the whole project, that what has been done, and we do a review to see is there anything need to be discussed or adjusted accordingly, and then you do the release. So every end of the sprint, you should have a release, which means the work you have done during the sprint or iteration, it can be released to the user. It's not something, there's no results, you just work on something and there's no outcome. There always should be some outcome.
Okay.
Even if it's not something you can give to the client, there should be even something like you write a piece of design in some documentation. That's also fine. So there should be some outcome after each sprint. So that means you always improve and keep going with the project. Yeah. So the sprint and iteration, that's basically the main idea. It keeps going and going. That way you always have a loop kind of thing. It's like coding. You have a loop. You keep going in this loop, and then you can improving and finish the work. Yeah. Now a little bit more about the planning meeting, because that's the start of the iteration. We probably will try this today when we have this basic stuff all sorted. So first thing is, in the planning meeting, you will prioritize and pick the top things from the backlog, right? For example, in the backlog, there are 200 stories there, but you can only work on one or two or whatever number, right? So you pick the most important thing you want to do first, and then you grab that into this sprint, right? And then you say, if the story is very big, you need to break it down to smaller pieces, right? So in a reasonable size, like for example, every day, if that's the size we decided, that shouldn't be bigger than that, then we make it smaller than that kind of size. So that way it's manageable, it's easier to estimate, because if it seems bigger, it cannot be estimated accurately, easily. And then on each of the story, you need to agree on the acceptance criteria. Do you know what that means?
No.
Yeah, so basically it means for this story to be completed, what kind of things need to be done? For example, the input difficulties, right? You
the
need people.
Criteria is like what we aim for.
It's the rules or the lines that says about what should be done for that user story.
Okay.
For example, this user story, we say we need to let the user input the difficulty, right? So the acceptance criteria will be something like, number one, user will see something on the screen, ask them to input 1, 2, 3, 4 as the difficulty level. Then the next line will say the user can input 1, 2, 3, 4 to the screen, and then number 3, maybe we will accept it and check whether the user has inputted 1, 2, 3, not some other numbers. If they input other numbers, what should we do? Those kind of things, right? So all those are acceptance criteria. Yeah.
Maybe they could still just keep it there, maybe.
Yeah, that's something you need to discuss in the planning meeting. So everyone agree on that. That way the story is confirmed. What kind of things should be done?
Yeah.
It's not a vague kind of idea.
So pretty much you're allowed to change things a bit, so things don't have to go exactly according to plan, maybe.
that's something you need to decide on the planning meeting. So
Yeah.
before you just have a rough idea, but in the plan meeting, you really make all those details clear, and then everyone knows what to work on, not just vaguely, this, that, and because we want to make sure the outcome is what everyone expected to be. Yeah. And then everyone in the team provide the estimation on the stories. So the estimation is probably the hardest part of the planning meeting because you don't know how big it is, right? You haven't worked on it. You don't know. So there are some ways to help you. One of those is to have some reference stories, because in the previous day, if you have done similar things, you say this kind of things usually will be a 1 point kind of thing, and then the next time you do a similar thing, you say, oh, this I've done, that's 1 point, there it's 1 point. And something else, you can see, oh, it's much harder than that. Maybe it's a 2 point or 3 point. You have a reference. So maybe for each of the reference points, you have similar stories before. Then you can use that system to estimate your size, right? So that's one way of the points. The other way is you use the time you think you need to work on that. That's also from experience, basically. You think, oh, this kind of things I used to finish it in 2 hours, 3 hours, then you put it that way. So those things in a complex project, they can be combined. So maybe that you have both points and hours. But for us, smaller team, maybe we just use hours or time to do the estimation.
Okay.
Yeah. And in your estimation, whichever way you take, you should consider the risks and unknowns, because it's not everything always you have experience with that you have done before. For example, if it's the first time you do something, usually you add 1 level or even 2 levels up to have some buffer. Say, because it is the first time I'm doing this, it might take me longer than expected, even it's a similar thing as something before. If there's something you don't know, then you add another level of estimation. So talking about the level of estimation, we don't usually use continuous numbers, not like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We use something called a Fibonacci sequence. Do you know what's a Fibonacci sequence? So it's like, do you see the pattern here? 1, 2, 3, 5. What's the pattern? Basically,
It's +1, +2.
No, it's like the number here, like for example, this 3 equals the previous 2 numbers plus together.
Oh.
So 5 is 2 plus 3, 8 is 3 plus 5, 13, 5 plus 8. Yeah, 21, 8 plus 30.
Integral?
Yeah, etc. So the size grows this way because we found this way, it's because if the size is bigger, it's harder to estimate. It's easier you get wrong. So we'd rather to put more buffer to say it can take longer. So that's why when it's bigger, we make the gap even bigger. So when you estimate something, you think it's kind of 3, but there's something I don't know, you just say 5, right? So if something like, you need maybe 5 days, then it can be, we will just say 8 days. So if it's bigger, we just make it bigger to cope with the uncertainty. Yeah. Yeah, that's what we said. It's less accurate if it's bigger, so we have bigger gaps. Yeah. Of course, the amount of work you picked into the curation, whether it's 2 weeks, 1 week, or 4 weeks, right? You need to pick something that fits in your capacity. So whatever you can finish, you think you can finish in that iteration, you pick those things. If there are more things you cannot finish, don't move it inside.
Okay.
Only keep the things you think you can finish. At the beginning, you might not know what's your capacity, how many amount of things you can work on.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have several iterations after, you usually get an idea, like in average or moving average kind of way. Okay, in last 3 weeks, every week I finished a certain points hours, and then most likely in the next week I can finish similar amount of work, right? So that way you know your capacity, and then when you move things into the sprint, you can plan better and know the outcomes. right?
Oh.
So that's probably most important parts of the basics of the Scrum. It's not, we said a lot of things, but if you think it's pretty straightforward. You just keep looping the same thing. You start with planning, you end with retrospective, and then in the middle, you just keep doing your things and review your work every day, something like that. Yeah. So to manage this kind of things, we need a system. So there's a software called Jira. That's the most popular one. Most people use it, but maybe there are other good things as well. But we will try this one first because this is, kind of the industry standard at the moment. But we'll start with this. If we find it's too complex or something, we can switch to other tools. Okay. So inside those tools, usually they provide something called a Kanban. Do you know what is Kanban? It's like a Japanese, Chinese kind of word.
For me, first when I heard it, I was like, it is Japanese.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like, is every coding word in every word in coding is Japan?
No. Yeah, this one is Japanese, I think.
Or is it most?
So Kanban is like a ban, like a ban. Yeah, so it's like a board. So usually on the Kanban, there's a column of things. So we have several columns usually. Like the first column usually it's defined. So you move the story from the backlog into the sprint. That's defined because it's defined with acceptance criteria, but haven't started yet, right? And then you move that thing into the progress. So whichever tickets or stories you work on, you move that thing on the in progress bar. Then that means you start to work on it, right? And when it's finished, you move it into the next column, say it's been testing. So usually we can ask mommy or someone to play the game and test it. And mommy will maybe say, oh, you make this sentence, you didn't put uppercase in the first letter. That's some things you might think it's a bug. And then it goes back to you. You need to fix it, right? That's a testing progress. So you will test it, you fix your issues, or something like you play it, put a number in, it crashed, we didn't do the casting, right? So those are the things in the testing process. Once everything is satisfied, you move that into the down. So before move to the down, you check all the acceptance criteria, make sure everything is meet whatever we expected. And then this tool will provide you some time management. So every time you start something, you need to log how much time you spend on that story every day. So that way we know from the beginning to the end of the iteration, we know how things goes.
Okay.
So when you put the time against every story, you also say how many time I think there's remaining on that story. Because, for example, you estimate something as 8 hours, and then you did 2 hours today.
Okay.
But you find you didn't do anything useful, and then the remaining hours still will be 8 hours, right? So you still log your time, say, I work on this for 2 hours, but the remaining hours is still 8 hours.
Okay.
In the other scenario, you work on that 8-hour story, and you crash it. You think, I'm already
isn't
done.
it about planning?
It's kind of adjust your planning every day.
Okay.
Because when you actually do work on the thing, you get more information, more detail of that thing, and then you get more and more accurate estimates every day. So, as what I was saying, though, if you crash the story, it's 8-hour story, but in 2 hours you finish most of the things. You can say remaining hours only one, right? So that way the story is getting much smaller after your 2 hours work, right? And then we introduce something called a burn chart. So burn down chart. So basically it's a chart going down because you work on things, the remaining hours of the stories all the stories in the iteration will get smaller and smaller. So in a perfect way, we should see the burn down chart going from start day to the end day in a slope like this. So it's gonna finish from for example, 20 hours to
So we
0
don't-
hours. So
we definitely don't want it to go like. It can go up, right?
Yeah, you find something, go up.
Yeah,
then
like
that's-
after if you make a big mistake, maybe it goes up.
Yeah, so that's when every day on the stand up, we review the burn down chart, right? We see yesterday you finished those things. What's the remaining hours of everything this sprint?
Yeah.
If it goes down as planned, we say, oh, good, that's good. Let's keep doing it. If something goes wrong, it goes up. Then we need to discuss in a sit-down meeting, say what's going wrong. Do we need to move something out of the sprint? Because in every sprint, we want something as a whole to be released, right? So if the thing doesn't go as planned, which happens all the time, you need to adjust your planning. You can move things out, you can move things in, because if you crash the thing, you get a sharp going down, you have no work to do in the sprint. You need to move things into the sprint and do more stories, right?
Just to say, one time when I was trying to make my first computer virus, I was excited, but then I checked how many. Then after I was done, the next day I found out that there was over 1,000 problems.
Yeah.
So
that's why you need the Kanban. You do every story, you
So-
have testing, you make sure everything is accepted, not
and now it's pretty much impossible to fix.
just yeah. That's why we need to break down things into smaller pieces.
Yeah, I think
Finish every piece, make sure it works.
I
this
tried
helping.
making a new one, but it also failed because there was also like a few billion viruses. I mean, a few billion things that went wrong.
Yeah, too many bugs. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this will help you not just your coding projects. This will help you on your study, on your daily life even.
Okay.
So we can have different projects for different things. One project for our escape game. One project maybe for your study. One project for your, say, cello learning. One for your piano learning, right? So those things can help you to plan your hours. And we can have a data at the end of the thing to view. Yeah.
It's done, and thanks for watching. So bye,
this
guys.
is the episode on the explanation of how Scrum works. In the next one, we will try to make use of the tools and set up the projects for you. And then we will
See you
start to
next
use it for your project even today, because it's Sunday. It's a good day to start the planning. Okay.
So see you next time,
Bye.
and bye.